Seemed like there was a systematic genital mutilation of women. In the women we saw, they had very bloody underwear. Women were shot. Our team has seen women shot in the crotch, in the genitals. Women were shot in the breast.
You saw this?
Our team saw this, yes. Women had legs cut off. There was a lot of, they were shot so many times in the head that in many cases it was like there was a purposeful obliteration of women's faces.
Good evening. I want to start tonight with the horrific accounts of sexual assault allegedly perpetrated by Hamas during the October the 7th attacks on Israel. And one account in particular, that of reservist Shari Mendez. She's not a forensic scientist, not an expert, but a volunteer whose primary job was to identify and prepare female soldiers for burial. She describes seeing bloodied underwear, faces repeatedly shot. She says she tried to give these women the respect they didn't receive when they were murdered. The Israeli government say they're preparing to make their evidence public. And the United Nations has urged any remaining living victims to come forward. But too much time has passed with no international investigation. And that's been the same for so many other conflicts, in Ukraine, in Ethiopia, in Sudan. Tonight, we'll discuss why there's been no concerted global effort to seek justice for those raped and assaulted during war. But let's begin with Shari's memories of those days in October, and a warning that she does describe in detail how women's bodies were mutilated.
Our unit was activated immediately on October 7th. My shift came in on Sunday morning, October 8th. I got to the base and it was unimaginable in two ways. It was unimaginable in terms of scale, the numbers. There were body bags everywhere. They were lining the corridors. They were lining up in refrigerated trucks coming into this Shura Army base where our unit is focused. Every single victim of the October 7th massacre was brought to this base. So it was unimaginable in the sense that this is a large facility and the halls were lined to the ceiling with body bags. The smell was unimaginable. I can't tell you enough the shock and despair that struck all of us.
And what were you seeing? You know, as you say, there were body bags, the horror of it. In terms of the women that were coming through, some of the women that were coming in, what were you seeing?
They were shot so many times in the head that in many cases it was like there was a purposeful obliteration of women's faces. We also saw women came in not very dressed, and they had often very bloody clothing, if they had any clothing, they had very bloody underwear. Women were shot. Our team has seen women shot in the crotch, in the genitals. Women were shot in the breast.
You saw this?
Our team saw this, yes. Women had legs cut off. There was a lot of, it seemed like there was a systematic genital mutilation of women. In the women we saw, sometimes we were told to run, and part of what we did was accompany these women. That was part of our purpose, and we never wanted to leave them alone. But they told everyone who was working on the base, you have to get out, there's a danger. And what was it? People were coming in booby-trapped, and sappers had to come in and clear the situation so that we could go back in.
I mean, the things you're describing, totally horrific. You've said you're not a forensics expert, but you were witnessing some of these horrors against the women that were coming in. What were the forensics experts saying? Were they asking you to collect the sort of the clothing and some of the body parts? I mean, what was the kind of exchange of information that you had with the forensics team?
So the purpose of our unit was actually more a Jewish religious role. We were in the examination room because we were there to accompany these women. We often opened body bags. We washed jewelry of blood to give back to families. of the deceased. I remember one woman had her arm and her leg were broken in so many places that it was like handling marbles or sand. And at a certain point we said, we'll just put a white sheet on top of her. In the examination room, we did not do any, there were experts in that room. We were there to accompany the people. But then we moved to a room, a separate room, that was more for us. It was a burial, preparation for burial room. And in there, it was just our team, women, dealing with women. And it was a different atmosphere. It was less rushed. We are not forensics experts, but we felt very strongly that we wanted to give these poor women some respect that they didn't get when they were horribly murdered and mutilated and disfigured. And it was our job to honor them. They could have been our daughters. They were the same ages as our children. And we figured we probably would be the last people to ever see them. So just for a moment, we loved them.
There's a lot of conversation around rape, sexual violence being used as a weapon of war. And as you say, you're not an expert. You were dealing with the bodies. But I guess this is also now part of the conversation around this as Israel collects the information and the data and the evidence for this. There's also people questioning, the kind of evidence. I mean, what would your response be to that?
I would have to say that this is still very early. Israel is still, rockets are still flying at us. We're still in very early stages of an investigation. We're still in shock. We're still in a deep state of trauma. 1,200 people were murdered. We still have 136 hostages. People can come to their own conclusions about whether or not physically, from the testimony I'm giving you, what happened to them. There's an awful lot of eyewitness testimony that saw rape. There was a time in not too recent history when eyewitness testimony, and there's an awful lot of it, was enough. I'm the child of Holocaust survivors, and all we ever had to know what happened to most of our family. My mother survived with her parents. Almost all of our extended family was murdered. We knew what happened to every one of them from eyewitness testimony. That may be the best we'll do.
I mean, that's the thing. When you see conflict, women are the first to be impacted. They're the first to disappear in times of war. They're the first to sort of be impacted, women and children, by conflict. And yet their testimonies and their experience isn't necessarily acknowledged in a lot of places around the world. We've seen that happen time and time again, especially when it's come to rape being used as a weapon of war.
If people are not believing them, it's hard enough to come forward. If the world believes you and embraces you, and rape victims need to be believed, if these women are being questioned about the veracity of their claims, why should they come forward? And I think we have to be patient. They're very traumatized, and it may take time. We're 117 days into this war. It may take a lot of time for these women to speak out, if they ever do.
Sherry, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Yalda. Thank you.